On the morning of June 14, 2004, in the high desert town of Farmington, New Mexico, the air was already warming under a pale blue sky when 32-year-old Elena Martinez failed to arrive at work. By noon, her absence had shifted from unusual to alarming. By sunset, deputies were standing in her driveway, staring at a house that looked undisturbed, almost peaceful. The coffee mug still sat on the kitchen counter. The back door was unlocked. Her silver 1998 Toyota Corolla was gone, and Elena Martinez, mother, nurse, neighbor, had vanished without a trace. What happened inside that quiet ranch-style home on Camino del Sol, and why would it take nearly 2 decades to uncover the truth? Alina lived with her husband, Daniel Martinez, 35, a mechanic at a local auto repair shop, and their 6-year-old son, Gabriel. Those who knew her described her as meticulous. She ironed her scrubs the night before every shift at San Juan Regional Medical Center. She packed Gabriel's lunch with handwritten notes folded into neat triangles. She kept a paper calendar on the refrigerator, each square filled with careful blue ink, soccer practice, dental appointments, Daniel's late shifts. The neighborhood was modest but tidy. Gravel driveways, low adobe fences, wind chimes that clinked softly in the afternoon breeze. On June 13, 2004, a Sunday, Alina had attended church at 9:00 a.m., sat in the third pew from the front and sang the closing hymn with her eyes closed. At 12:47 p.m., she purchased groceries at the Smith's on East 20th Street. The receipt, later found folded in her purse, showed milk, tortillas, ground beef, apples, and a small chocolate cake. The day moved quietly. At 3:15 p.m., neighbor Patricia Gomez saw Alina watering her rose bushes. She waved, Patricia would later say. Just like always, nothing seemed wrong. At 6:32 p.m., Daniel clocked out of work according to timecard records. He later told deputies he arrived home at 7:05 p.m. Dinner was eaten. Gabriel watched cartoons. By 9:00 p.m., the house lights dimmed one by one. What happened next would fracture that routine forever. According to Daniel's initial statement, he woke at 6:10 a.m. on Monday, June 14. Alina was not in bed. He assumed she had left early for her 7:00 a.m. shift, but when he entered the kitchen, her purse lay on the counter. Her cell phone, an older flip model, sat beside it. The coffee maker was full but untouched. The back door stood slightly ajar. At 6:28 a.m., Daniel called Alina's workplace. She had not arrived. At 6:41 a.m., he called her sister, Marisol. At 7:12 a.m., he dialed 911. Deputy Harold Jenkins arrived at 7:24 a.m. The morning sun cast long shadows across the gravel driveway. The swing in the backyard hung still. The toy truck lay on its side in the dirt. Inside, nothing appeared ransacked. No broken glass. No forced entry. The bed was made. House in order, Jenkins wrote in his field notebook. Personal items left behind. Vehicle missing. Alina's Corolla was entered into the state system at 8:02 a.m. By noon, search teams were canvassing nearby arroyos and desert scrub. Helicopters circled overhead, their blades slicing the hot air. Volunteers formed lines across dry washes. The scent of sagebrush mixed with dust. The first 48 hours passed in a blur of interviews and phone calls. Daniel appeared composed, if pale. He told deputies they had argued lightly about finances the week before, but insisted it was nothing serious. She wouldn't just leave, he said at 3:17 p.m., seated at the kitchen table. She loved Gabriel. Those who knew him said Daniel had always been quiet, reserved. Not emotional, one coworker noted. Keeps to himself. Deputies whispered quietly about his calm demeanor. At 5:45 p.m., while volunteers were still combing the outskirts of town, Daniel was seen standing alone in the driveway, arms folded, watching the searchers without speaking. By June 16, Alina's car was found abandoned 23 miles north near Navajo Lake. The driver's seat was pushed back farther than she would have needed. The odometer showed 162,442 miles, 12 more than recorded at her last oil change 2 weeks earlier. Inside the vehicle, investigators found no signs of struggle, no fingerprints beyond family, no blood, just a faint smell of gasoline. Detective Laura Chavez took over the case on June 17 at 8:30 a.m. She noted in her report, vehicle placement inconsistent with voluntary departure, no luggage missing, bank accounts untouched. Surveillance footage from nearby gas stations showed nothing conclusive. A grainy image at 10:14 p.m. on June 13 captured a car resembling Alina's heading northbound on Highway 511, but the driver's face was obscured. If you have ever noticed a detail that does not fit, you understand how it lingers. The unlocked back door, the untouched coffee, the extra 12 miles. The community rallied. Candlelight vigils lit the church parking lot. Local news stations aired Alina's photo nightly. "Bring Alina home," posters read in thick black marker. Tips poured in, sightings in Albuquerque, rumors of a secret relationship, whispers of debt, but none substantiated. As days turned into weeks, small inconsistencies surfaced. Daniel initially stated he went to bed at 10:00 p.m. Phone records later showed a 12-minute call placed from the home landline at 10:47 p.m. to an unregistered prepaid number. When asked, Daniel said he could not recall the call. "Must have been a wrong number," he shrugged. Detective Chavez measured the distance from the Martinez home to Navajo Lake, 31 minutes under normal conditions. Yet the timeline between 9:00 p.m. and midnight remained hazy. Neighbors reported hearing a car engine at approximately 11:15 p.m., though none could be certain. Physical evidence remained scarce. Soil samples from the Corolla's tires contained traces of red clay, uncommon near the lake, but prevalent in a remote construction site 12 miles east. Deputies visited the site on June 22. Nothing visible, just wind moving across open land. Investigators' doubts grew quietly. In her notes dated July 3, Chavez wrote, "Husband displays unusual composure, minimal effect when discussing spouse, avoids eye contact when timeline questioned." Yet without a body, without direct evidence, the case stalled. Leads dried up. Media attention faded. By December 2005, the file was moved to the cold case unit. The swing hung still. The toy truck lay on its side. Seasons changed. Dust settled over unanswered questions. Years passed. Gabriel turned 7, then 8. The Martinez home was sold in 2007. Daniel relocated to Albuquerque, taking a job at a larger automotive shop. Marisol maintained contact with investigators, calling every June 14 for updates. "We can't forget her," she would say. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, the silence can be heavier than accusation. Friends noticed Daniel rarely spoke of Alina. He did not attend annual vigils. When asked in a 2008 local news segment if he believed she was alive, he paused for 4 full seconds before answering, "I don't know." Gabriel began drawing pictures at school, dark shapes beneath a wide desert sky. In one, a small figure stood alone beside a car. Teachers mentioned nightmares. Daniel declined counseling services offered by a nonprofit. In 2012, Daniel remarried. The ceremony was small. Those who knew him said he seemed eager to move forward. Yet financial records later revealed life insurance payouts from 2004 totaling $250,000, deposited in increments over 6 months. The breaking point came in March 2022. On March 18 at 4:12 p.m., now 24-year-old Gabriel Martinez walked into the Farmington Police Department. He requested to speak with a detective about his mother's disappearance. Detective Chavez, now nearing retirement, agreed to meet him the following morning. At 9:03 a.m. on March 19, Gabriel sat across from her in interview room B. He clasped his hands tightly. "I remember something," he began. His voice trembled. "I was awake that night. I heard them arguing. Dad said, 'You're not taking him.' And she said, 'I have to.'" He described hearing a loud thud at approximately 10:52 p.m. He recalled peering down the hallway and seeing his father dragging what looked like a rolled-up rug. "He saw me," Gabriel said. "He told me to go back to bed." Detective Chavez reopened the case on March 21, 2022. The construction site east of town, now partially developed, was re-examined using ground-penetrating radar. On April 2 at 11:37 a.m., anomalies were detected beneath a concrete slab poured in late June 2004. Excavation began April 4. At 2:16 p.m., investigators uncovered human remains wrapped in deteriorated carpet fibers. Dental records confirmed the identity on April 7. Elena Martinez. Daniel Martinez was arrested on April 8, 2022 at 6:45 a.m. outside his Albuquerque residence. He showed little expression as officers placed him in handcuffs. A neighbor captured the moment on a phone camera. News spread rapidly. "After 18 years, one headline read, an arrest in Farmington cold case." In interrogation, Daniel initially denied involvement, but confronted with forensic findings, fibers matching carpet from the 2004 Martinez home, soil samples consistent with the construction site, and cell tower pings placing his phone near the area at 11:32 p.m. His story faltered. At 4:22 p.m. he stated quietly, "It was an accident." He claimed an argument escalated. "She fell," he said, "hit her head." Yet medical examination revealed blunt force trauma inconsistent with a fall. The trial began January 9, 2024 in San Juan County District Court. Prosecutors presented Gabriel's testimony. He stated, "I saw him pull the rug. I heard him say, 'No one will find you.'" Defense attorneys argued memory distortion over time. The courtroom remained silent as photographs of the excavation were displayed. Those who believed Daniel innocent filled one side of the gallery. Those who doubted him sat opposite. The tension was palpable, thick as desert heat. On February 2, 2024, at 3:48 p.m., the jury returned a verdict of guilty on charges related to Alina's death. Daniel Martinez showed no visible reaction. Gabriel wept quietly in the second row. Justice, though delayed, had arrived. Elena Martinez's name was spoken again, not as a missing person, but as a woman remembered. Her story lingered in Farmington like the echo of wind across open land. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard. By 8:15 a.m. on June 14, 2004, the Martinez home no longer felt like a home. It felt like a contained space, air thick, curtains unmoving, silence pressing against the walls. Deputies moved carefully from room to room, their boots leaving faint impressions in the beige carpet. The evaporative cooler hummed softly overhead. A clock ticked in the hallway, ordinary sounds, unsettling in their normalcy. Detective Harold Jenkins paused in the kitchen doorway and studied the counter. Alina's purse sat upright, zipper closed. Inside were her driver's license, $43 in cash, 2 credit cards, and the folded grocery receipt from the day before. Nothing removed, nothing disturbed. If you have ever prepared to leave your life behind, you do not leave your identification on the counter. At 8:42 a.m., Jenkins photographed the coffee maker. The water reservoir was full. A filter had been placed in the basket, grounds measured but dry. Alina had prepared it the night before, as she always did, but she had not pressed the switch. Routine interrupted, Jenkins wrote. In the master bedroom, the bedspread was smooth, pillows aligned. Daniel claimed he made the bed after realizing she was gone, yet the indentation on the right side, the side Alina slept on, appeared shallow, as if it had not been occupied for long. A subtle detail, the kind that lingers. Gabriel sat at the dining table coloring while a female officer stayed nearby. He drew a house with a wide sun overhead. When asked when he last saw his mother, he said, "Last night." When asked if anything strange happened, he shook his head and returned to his crayons. Children sometimes forget. Children sometimes protect. By 9:30 a.m., deputies canvassed the immediate block. Patricia Gomez repeated her account. She watered the roses around 3, she said. She wore a yellow t-shirt. Another neighbor, Thomas Wilkes, reported hearing what he described as a car door slam sometime after 11:00 p.m. Could have been anyone, he added. Didn't look. At 10:12 a.m., Detective Chavez arrived and requested phone records. The landline logs confirmed an outgoing call at 10:47 p.m. to a prepaid cellular number activated 3 weeks earlier. Duration, 12 minutes, 38 seconds. No subscriber information available. Daniel was asked about it again at 10:26 a.m. He rubbed his forehead, clears throat. I don't remember calling anyone. Maybe Alina did. But she left her cell phone, Chavez responded. Daniel stared at the tabletop. Then I don't know. The timeline narrowed. 6:32 p.m. Daniel clocked out. 7:05 p.m. arrived home. 7:30 p.m. dinner. 8:15 p.m. Gabriel bathed. 9:00 p.m. lights out. 10:47 p.m. landline call placed. 11:15 p.m. neighbor hears engine. 6:10 a.m. Daniel wakes, Alina gone. If you have noticed how small discrepancies begin to form patterns, you understand why investigators circled those hours repeatedly. At 11:58 a.m., officers requested consent to search Daniel's pickup truck, a red 2001 Ford F-150. He agreed. Inside the cab, nothing unusual appeared, but in the truck bed, faint scratches marked the inner lining, the kind left by heavy objects dragged across metal. Daniel explained he often transported engine blocks from work. That explanation was noted. At 1:17 p.m., K-9 units arrived. The dogs alerted briefly near the garage entrance but did not sustain interest. Wind conditions were shifting, temperatures rising. By mid-afternoon, the desert heat shimmered above asphalt. Volunteers gathered at the church by 3:00 p.m. Maps were distributed. Search grids assigned. Retired firefighters. Teenagers on summer break. Mothers pushing strollers. The entire community seemed to exhale in unison, determined to bring Alina home. Helicopters swept over arroyos. Deputies on horseback scanned ravines. Divers prepared to examine irrigation canals. Every detail catalogued. Every mile walked. At 4:43 p.m., Daniel stood before local reporters. Microphones angled upward. Cameras whirred. He wore the same blue work shirt from that morning. "Please," he said, voice steady. "If anyone knows anything, come forward." Those who knew him said he did not cry. By June 15 at 7:30 a.m., search efforts expanded toward Navajo Lake after a fisherman reported seeing a silver sedan parked near a dirt access road the previous evening. The vehicle was located at 9:02 a.m., doors locked, windows rolled up. Dust coated the windshield. Detective Chavez examined the interior. The driver's seat was positioned far back. Alina, at 5 feet 4 inches tall, typically kept the seat forward. The rearview mirror angled higher than expected. Minor details, yet consistent with someone taller operating the vehicle. No footprints were visible around the car due to wind-blown sand. Tire impressions suggested the vehicle had arrived during late-night hours when the ground was slightly damp from an earlier irrigation release. Inside the trunk, a faint imprint in the carpet indicated something rectangular had once rested there. Measurements were taken, photographs logged, nothing overtly conclusive. Forensic technicians dusted surfaces. Only family prints appeared. At 12:15 p.m., Chavez dictated into her recorder. No immediate signs of struggle. Vehicle staging possible. Distance from residence to lake, 23 miles direct, 31 via main highway. Estimated drive time, 28 to 32 minutes. Back at the Martinez home, investigators removed a section of living room carpet after noticing faint discoloration beneath the coffee table. Preliminary testing was inconclusive. No visible staining, but the fibers were retained for laboratory analysis. Deputies whispered quietly in the hallway about the absence of forced entry. "If someone took her," one murmured, "why leave the purse?" By June 20, 5 days in, exhaustion set in. Volunteers thinned. Media vans departed. The desert resumed its quiet rhythm. Daniel resumed work on June 21. He arrived at the shop at 8:03 a.m., signed in, and replaced a transmission by noon. Coworkers later said he did not speak much that day. "Just quiet," one noted, "like always." If you have ever watched someone return to routine while uncertainty lingers, you know how unsettling it can feel. Detective Chavez re-examined the prepaid number dialed at 10:47. Cell tower data placed the receiving phone near the outskirts of Farmington that evening, but inactive since. Purchased with cash. No surveillance footage from the convenience store retained. On June 28, laboratory results from the carpet fibers revealed trace amounts of human blood, degraded but present. Blood type matched Alina's medical records. The quantity was small, microscopic, but significant. Daniel was re-interviewed July 1 at 2:14 p.m. "We found traces," Chavez stated evenly. He leaned back in his chair. "She cut her finger once, could be that." "On the living room carpet." He exhaled slowly. "I don't know." His tone remained controlled, measured. In her notebook, Chavez later wrote, "Subject maintains composure, limited emotional variance, avoids elaboration." Yet without a body, prosecutors hesitated. The evidence suggested something had happened inside the home, but suggestion was not certainty. Summer turned to fall. Leaves gathered along sidewalks. The swing in the backyard hung still. The toy truck lay on its side. And somewhere beneath layers of dust and time, the truth waited. By August 2004, the official search had narrowed, but the questions had only widened. At 6:00 a.m. on August 3, a team of 6 deputies returned to the construction site 12 miles east of Farmington, the one where red clay clung to tires like memory. The land was flat, interrupted only by half-framed foundations and stacks of lumber wrapped in plastic. Cicadas buzzed in the heat. A faint smell of cement dust lingered in the air. Detective Chavez stood near the edge of the lot, reviewing photographs taken weeks earlier. Tire tracks had long since faded, but the soil samples collected from Elena's Corolla, fine red particles mixed with limestone aggregate, matched the composition of that specific site. It was not common desert dirt. It was engineered fill. Could be coincidence, one deputy offered quietly. Could be, Chavez replied, but she did not sound convinced. Ground at the site was probed manually with steel rods. No obvious disturbances were detected. Concrete slabs had already been poured in late June. Construction records showed deliveries on June 21 and June 24. The timeline tightened uncomfortably. Back in Farmington, community support remained visible but subdued. Yellow ribbons tied to mailboxes had begun to fray under the sun. A banner reading "Hope for Alina" still hung outside the church, though its edges curled inward. Those who knew him said Daniel kept attending Sunday service. He sat in the same pew. He bowed his head at the same hymns, but he rarely spoke to others after. On August 12 at 4:37 p.m., investigators received a call from a coworker at the auto shop. The man reported that Daniel had asked, casually, whether police could track older vehicles without GPS. "Just curious," Daniel had reportedly said while tightening a bolt beneath a lifted sedan. Deputies whispered quietly about that comment. "Strange thing to wonder," one remarked. Phone records were reviewed again. The prepaid number dialed at 10:47 p.m. on June 13 had also contacted Daniel's personal cell twice in May 2004. Duration: under 1 minute each. When confronted with this, Daniel stated, "I don't remember that number." If you have noticed how memory falters selectively, you understand why investigators wrote that down. By September, search warrants expanded to financial records. Bank statements showed steady withdrawals in the weeks before Elena's disappearance, cash amounts under $300, not alarming alone, but consistent. Life insurance documentation surfaced September 14, 2004. Policy established in 2001. Beneficiary: Daniel Martinez. Payout pending official declaration. At 2:02 p.m. that afternoon, Chavez recorded in her case log, "Motive cannot be excluded. Financial stress noted. Argument reportedly overheard by Sister Marisol regarding separation." Marisol confirmed that Alina had mentioned considering leaving the marriage. She said things weren't right, Marisol told investigators on September 18 at 11:10. She didn't say he hurt her, just that she felt afraid sometimes. Afraid, a word that shifted tone. Daniel denied any marital instability. "We argued like anyone," he said October 1 during another interview, "but we were fine." Fine. Meanwhile, forensic technicians re-examined the F-150 pickup using luminol testing. On October 12 at 9:45 p.m., faint luminescent traces appeared along the truck bed's interior seam. Samples were collected. Later analysis indicated diluted blood presence, too degraded for definitive typing. Transfer possible, lab notes read. Age undetermined. The pattern suggested cleaning. When asked about cleaning the truck in mid-June, Daniel responded, "I wash it every week." Yet weather records showed no rainfall between June 13 and June 18. Dust accumulation on photographs taken June 15 appeared uneven, as if recently disturbed. Small details, layered. By November 2004, The case had drawn regional media attention. A segment aired at 6:00 p.m. featuring aerial shots of Navajo Lake, the Martinez home, and Daniel speaking briefly outside the courthouse where he had filed paperwork regarding property adjustments. Reporters noted his calm tone. One anchor commented, "He appears remarkably composed." Those who believed him said grief looks different on everyone. Those who doubted him saw something colder. Winter arrived early that year. Snow dusted rooftops December 3. Search efforts slowed significantly. Volunteers dwindled to a handful of persistent neighbors who walked desert trails on weekends, scanning for fabric, bone, anything unnatural against sand. On January 9, 2005, the case was formally reclassified as a long-term missing persons investigation. Detective Chavez met with the district attorney February 2 at 10:30 a.m. They reviewed evidence. Blood traces in carpet, soil consistency, prepaid phone, inconsistent seat position, truck luminol reaction. Circumstantial, compelling, but incomplete. No body, the district attorney said quietly. No direct witness. The file thickened, leads thinned. In March 2005, Daniel sold the Corolla's title to the insurance company after claim processing concluded. The vehicle was eventually auctioned, scrubbed of its history and paperwork lines few would read twice. Gabriel turned 7 that spring. If you have ever watched a child carry absence without understanding it, you know how silence grows heavy in a room. Teachers reported Gabriel occasionally staring at doorways during dismissal. Once, he told a classmate, "Mom got lost in the desert." When asked by a counselor what he meant, he shrugged. The swing hung still. The toy truck lay on its side. By June 2005, 1 year since Alina vanished, a vigil was held at 8:00 p.m. Candles flickered in glass jars. Marisol spoke briefly. Daniel did not attend. When asked later why, he said, "I grieve privately." Detective Chavez wrote in her notebook that night, "Subject increasingly distant from community events related to victim." Rumors circulated quietly, whispers at grocery stores, conversations lowered when Daniel entered rooms, yet no formal charges emerged. In September 2005, the Cold Case Unit inherited the file. Boxes labeled Martinez, Elena 2004 were placed on metal shelving in a climate-controlled room, evidence bags sealed, notes archived. Time moved forward as it always does. For those who have ever waited for truth to surface, you understand how it can feel buried beneath ordinary days. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. The Martinez home changed owners. Fresh paint covered living room walls where fibers had once been cut away. But unresolved details remained in ink and memory. The red clay, the 12 miles, the 12-minute phone call. And somewhere beyond sight, beneath something solid and poured too quickly, a silence endured. By 2007, 3 years after Elena Martinez disappeared, the case had settled into the quiet category investigators refer to simply as pending. Not closed, not active, just waiting. Daniel and Gabriel relocated to Albuquerque in April of that year. Moving receipts showed a rental truck picked up April 12 at 9:14. The Martinez home on Camino del Sol sold 2 months later for $162,000. The new owners replaced the living room carpet entirely. They never knew a small square of it had once sat inside an evidence locker. Albuquerque offered anonymity, wider roads, larger schools, fewer whispers. Daniel secured employment at Desert Ridge Automotive on April 23, 2007. Payroll records showed steady hours, overtime accepted frequently. Coworkers described him as dependable, quiet. He never talked about his wife, one later recalled. If someone asked, he'd say, "It's in God's hands." Gabriel adjusted differently. School reports from fall 2007 noted he struggled with concentration. He startled easily at loud noises. During a classroom writing exercise in October, he composed a single sentence: "The desert keeps secrets." The teacher circled the line but did not understand its weight. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, you know how memory can become fragmented. Images surface at night. Sounds echo differently in silence. In 2009, Daniel filed paperwork to access the remaining portion of Alina's life insurance policy. The total disbursement reached $247,893. Financial records show a down payment placed on a modest two-bedroom house in northeast Albuquerque by June 2009. Neighbors described Daniel as polite but distant. He mowed his lawn every Saturday at precisely 8:00 a.m. He waved without lingering. The house remained orderly, curtains drawn at night. Gabriel entered adolescence carrying something unspoken. In March 2011, at age 13, he began waking from nightmares. According to counseling notes obtained years later, he described hearing a heavy sound and dragging. The counselor asked if he had ever shared those memories with anyone. He shook his head. Children protect, children reinterpret, children survive. Daniel remarried in July 2012. The ceremony took place at a small chapel outside Albuquerque at 4:30 p.m. Photographs show him smiling faintly beside his new wife, Teresa Alvarez, a dental hygienist. Gabriel stood stiffly in a gray suit, hands folded in front of him. Those who knew him said Daniel appeared eager to begin again. New routines formed. New furniture filled the living room. Fresh paint masked older walls. Yet small fractures appeared. In 2014, Teresa reportedly told a friend that Daniel became unusually tense whenever news stories about missing persons aired on television. "He changes the channel," she said, "every time." In 2016, Gabriel, now 18, left for community college. Distance gave him space, and with space came questions. If you have noticed how memory shifts when you are no longer under the same roof, you understand what began to happen. During a psychology course in fall 2018, Gabriel wrote a paper on childhood memory reliability. He cited research about traumatic encoding and sensory imprinting. In a private journal entry dated November 14, 2018, he wrote, "I remember a rolled rug." The phrase lingered. Daniel and Teresa's marriage grew strained by 2019. Financial disagreements surfaced. Teresa reportedly confronted Daniel after discovering he had kept old newspaper clippings about Alina's disappearance stored in a locked drawer. "Why keep these?" she asked, according to a statement she later gave investigators. Daniel responded, "Because people don't let it go." Arguments increased in frequency. On April 6, 2020, police were called to the Albuquerque residence following a neighbor's complaint about raised voices. No charges were filed. Officers documented a verbal dispute only. For those who have ever lived with doubt beneath the surface, tension becomes part of the architecture of a home. Meanwhile, back in Farmington, Detective Chavez had retired in 2018 after 32 years of service. Yet she kept a personal copy of the Martinez file at her residence, notes, timelines, photographs. "Unfinished," she once described it to a colleague. In 2021, Farmington police launched a review initiative of unsolved cases predating 2010. Advances in forensic technology prompted re-examination of archived evidence. Carpet fibers from the Martinez home were resubmitted for updated testing in September 2021. Results returned December 3, 2021. Enhanced analysis confirmed the blood trace was not merely consistent with Alina's type. It matched her DNA profile obtained from stored medical records. The quantity remained small but definitive. The finding alone was not enough to file charges, but it reignited attention. On January 12, 2022, Detective Marcus Hale of the Cold Case Unit contacted Gabriel, now 23, requesting a voluntary interview regarding any additional recollections from 2004. Gabriel agreed. The interview was scheduled for March 19, 2022. The night before, Gabriel reportedly did not sleep. He later described sitting in his apartment at 2:00 a.m., replaying fragments, the hum of the cooler, the sound of something heavy striking the floor, his father's silhouette in the hallway. For those who have ever carried a memory that does not fully surface, the breaking point often arrives quietly. At 9:03 a.m. on March 19, 2022, Gabriel entered interview room B at the Farmington Police Department. Detective Hale placed a recorder on the table. "Whenever you're ready," Hale said gently. Gabriel inhaled slowly, clear his throat. "I wasn't asleep," he began. "I told myself I was, but I heard them arguing. Mom said she was leaving. Dad said, 'You're not taking him.' Then there was a loud thud. I thought she dropped something." He paused. "I walked into the hallway. I saw Dad pulling a rug. It looked heavy. He looked at me and said, 'Go back to bed. Everything's fine.'" "Everything's fine." Gabriel's voice trembled as he added, "I didn't tell anyone because he was my dad." The silence that followed in that room was long, recorded. Detective Hale requested clarification on timeline. "About what time?" he asked. "After the news ended," Gabriel replied, "around 11. The memory aligned with the 10:47 p.m. phone call, with the neighbor hearing an engine at 11:15 p.m. with soil beneath tires. On March 21, 2022, the Martinez case was formally reopened. For nearly 18 years, silence had filled the gaps, but now something had shifted. And beneath concrete poured in late June 2004, the desert had kept its secret long enough. On March 22, 2022, at 8:17 a.m., Detective Marcus Hale submitted a request for ground-penetrating radar at the former construction site 12 miles east of Farmington. The land, once vacant in 2004, now held a small storage facility built in stages over the years. Concrete slabs layered over graded soil. Permits dated June 21 and June 24, 2004, aligned precisely with the days following Elena Martinez's disappearance. The request was approved March 25. On April 2, 2022, at 11:06 a.m., the radar unit began scanning along the easternmost slab, an area that, according to archived satellite imagery, had remained exposed ground until late June 2004. Wind swept across the lot in low gusts. The sky was pale and empty. At 11:37 a.m., a technician paused. An irregular anomaly appeared approximately 4 feet below the surface, rectangular, distinct from surrounding soil density. Detective Hale leaned closer to the monitor. "Mark that," he said quietly. Excavation was scheduled for April 4 at 9:00 a.m. By mid-morning that Monday, a perimeter had been established. Yellow tape fluttered against chain-link fencing. A backhoe operator removed the upper layer of concrete under supervision. Each movement deliberate, each inch documented. At 1:52 p.m., the bucket exposed darker soil beneath compacted fill. Manual digging began. At 2:16 p.m., a fragment of deteriorated fabric surfaced, coarse, brown fibers consistent with carpeting manufactured in the early 2000s. At 2:24 p.m., human remains were located. The scene fell silent except for wind. Forensic anthropologists worked carefully through the afternoon. Remains were wrapped partially in carpet padding. Binding material had degraded but was visible. The position suggested deliberate placement. Dental comparison was initiated April 6 at 10:11 a.m. On April 7, 2022 at 3:40 p.m. confirmation arrived. The remains were Elena Martinez. 18 years, 9 months, 24 days. Detective Hale notified Marisol Martinez first. The call lasted 6 minutes. Witnesses later said she did not cry immediately. She whispered, "We knew." Daniel Martinez was arrested the following morning, April 8, 2022, at 6:45 a.m. outside his Albuquerque residence. Officers approached as he stepped into his driveway holding a travel mug. Body camera footage recorded the exchange. Daniel Martinez, an officer asked. "Yes. You're under arrest in connection with the death of Elena Martinez." Daniel blinked once. His expression remained flat. He placed the mug on the hood of his truck before turning his hands behind his back. At 10:22 a.m., he sat in interview room 3 at Farmington Police Department. Detective Hale entered carrying a file nearly 3 inches thick. For the first 20 minutes, Daniel denied involvement. "I told you," he said, "she left." Hale slid photographs across the table, images from the excavation, fibers matching the Martinez living room carpet, soil analysis linking the truck bed to the burial site. At 11:14 a.m., Hale said calmly, "Your phone connected to a tower near this site at 11:32 p.m. on June 13, 2004. Daniel stared at the image. At 11:27 a.m., he spoke. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." The recorder captured every word. He described an argument escalating over custody and separation. "She said she was taking Gabriel," he said. "I told her no." "What happened next?" Hale asked. Daniel swallowed, cleared his throat. "She fell, hit her head on the coffee table." Medical examiners would later testify that Alina sustained multiple blunt force injuries, inconsistent with a single fall. Hale pressed further, "Then why bury her?" Daniel's response came after a long pause. "I panicked." He admitted to wrapping her in the living room carpet shortly after 11:00 p.m. He admitted driving first to Navajo Lake to stage the vehicle, then to the construction site where he had previously completed side mechanic work for a contractor. He claimed he knew concrete would be poured within days. "I thought no one would ever look there," he said. Investigators documented the confession at 12:03. Charges were formally filed April 9, 2022. News spread rapidly across New Mexico. By evening, media vans lined the street outside the storage facility. Headlines read, 2004 cold case solved. Husband arrested after son's statement. Public reaction divided quickly. Those who believed him innocent described the arrest as shocking. "He seemed normal," one former coworker told reporters. "Quiet, sure, but never violent. Those who doubted him said the composure had always unsettled them. "He never searched," a former neighbor remarked. "Not really." On January 9, 2024, the trial began in San Juan County District Court at 8:58 a.m. Prosecutors presented the forensic timeline first. Blood trace confirmed as Alina, luminol reaction in the truck bed, soil composition linking vehicle and burial site, cell tower data placing Daniel near the construction lot. Gabriel testified January 16 at 10:14 a.m. He sat upright, hands clasped tightly. "I heard Mom say, 'You can't control everything,'" he told the jury. "Then I heard a loud noise." When asked what his father said to him that night, Gabriel answered, "He looked at me and said, 'Go back to bed. Everything's fine.'" The courtroom remained still. Defense attorneys argued memory distortion. They questioned the reliability of childhood recollection nearly 2 decades later. They suggested contamination through media exposure. But prosecutors returned to physical evidence. The carpet fibers. The burial depth measured at 4 feet 3 inches. The timeline aligning with concrete delivery records dated June 21, 2004 at 7:42 a.m. On February 2, 2024 at 3:48 p.m. the jury returned. Guilty. Daniel Martinez showed no visible emotion as the verdict was read. Gabriel exhaled sharply, tears forming but contained. Marisol closed her eyes. The swing had hung still for 18 years. The toy truck had long since been discarded. But the truth, buried beneath layers of soil and poured stone, had finally surfaced. Justice, though delayed, had spoken. On February 2, 2024 at 4:12 p.m. after the jury was dismissed, the courtroom remained unusually quiet. The late afternoon sun filtered through narrow windows, casting long bars of light across polished wood floors. Daniel Martinez sat motionless as the judge scheduled formal sentencing for March 18, 2024 at 9:00 a.m. He nodded once when asked if he understood. He did not look at Gabriel. Outside the courthouse, wind moved through the parking lot in steady gusts. Microphones were extended. Camera lights blinked on. Marisol stepped forward first. "For 18 years, she said, voice steady but low, "we waited for someone to say her name in truth." She did not raise her voice. She did not point. She simply stepped back. Gabriel declined to speak publicly that day. He walked past reporters without breaking stride, eyes fixed ahead. For those who have ever carried memory longer than comfort allows, you understand that verdicts do not erase the years in between. Sentencing day arrived with gray skies and scattered rain, rare for March in northern New Mexico. On March 18, 2024 at 9:02 a.m., Daniel stood once more before the bench. The prosecution presented a timeline spanning nearly 2 decades. June 13, 2004, argument heard. 10:47 p.m. landline call. 11:15 p.m. engine heard. June 14, missing person report. June 21, concrete poured. April 7, 2022, identification confirmed. Repetition for emphasis, repetition for weight. The swing hung still, the concrete hardened, the file gathered dust. The defense asked for leniency, citing lack of prior record and the passage of time. The judge spoke at 9:47 a.m. Elena Martinez was denied a voice for 18 years, he said. This court now acknowledges what the evidence has shown. Daniel Martinez was sentenced to life imprisonment, with eligibility for parole after 30 years. He showed no outward reaction. If you have noticed how some expressions remain unchanged even at the end, you understand why investigators once described his composure as unusual. After sentencing, Detective Marcus Hale stood briefly in the hallway with retired Detective Laura Chavez, who had attended quietly in the back row. "We always thought the soil mattered," Chavez said softly. Hale nodded. It did. Outside, community members gathered not in outrage but in reflection. Some held small photographs of Alina from 2004, the same image that had once appeared on flyers taped to telephone poles. The town of Farmington had grown since then. New stores, new subdivisions, children who had not yet been born when Alina vanished now walked those same streets. Yet memory lingers in places where silence once settled. The Martinez home on Camino del Sol had long since changed owners again. The backyard swing had been replaced, the rose bushes removed, but for those who remembered, the address still carried weight. Gabriel returned there once in April 2024. He stood on the sidewalk at 6:15 p.m., watching the sun lower behind distant mesas. He did not knock on the door. He did not step onto the property. He simply stood. For those who have ever revisited a place that shaped you, you know how air can feel different, thicker, charged with echoes. He later told a friend, "I wanted to see it in daylight." There was no anger in his tone, only exhaustion. Investigators closed the Martinez file officially on May 1, 2024. At 2:22 p.m. the final entry read, "Case resolved through confession corroborated by forensic evidence and witness testimony." Boxes were sealed, digital records archived. But resolution does not mean forgetting. In quiet moments, some residents still recall the summer of 2004, the helicopters circling overhead, the yellow ribbons, the unanswered questions whispered over grocery aisles. They remember how ordinary it all seemed before. A Sunday church service, a chocolate cake, a coffee maker prepared for morning. Small details that once meant nothing. If you have noticed how tragedy often hides inside routine, you understand why this case stayed with those who worked it. Detective Chavez once wrote in her personal notebook, dated July 2004, "Something happened in that living room. The room is too quiet." 18 years later, that observation proved true. Elena Martinez was laid to rest properly in April 2024 beside her parents in a small cemetery overlooking open desert. The ceremony was private. Wind moved gently through sparse grass. Gabriel placed a single white rose on the casket before it was lowered. No cameras, no microphones. Just family. The desert no longer held her. Justice does not return time. It does not repair childhood memories fractured by fear. It does not quiet every question. But it names what happened. It acknowledges truth where silence once stood. And in doing so, it restores, at least in part, the voice that was taken. Elena Martinez was not a headline, not a case number. She was a mother who packed lunches with folded notes, a nurse who ironed her scrubs the night before every shift, a woman whose coffee maker waited for morning. Her story now stands as record of patience, of persistence, of a son who found the courage to speak. The swing hung still, the toy truck lay on its side, but the truth did not remain buried. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.